Philosophers talk to our times, a natural history of Myddle, a meditation on Myddle through another, and Hume. Hume is surely the king of understanding passive synthesis. His entire philosophy, in many ways, is a study in how the mind begins always in the passive tense, and only very latterly, towards the end, can understand its activity. Think where he begins his first book, written when he was 28. Treatise. He begins it, as I always say, with a paradox. The paradox of perception. Perception has two elements. It has the qualitative element, that which kindles fire in the mind, that allows you to see green or the blue of a sky. Ideas, then, that you feel are in you, but relate to something beyond you. They are impressions, always impressions. And they are indistinguishable from your imagination, save in the burning heat of their fire. They have a liveliness, a vivacity that cannot be imagined, cannot be understood as anything other than belonging to something beyond you. Something other than what your brain, left to itself, would ever conjure up. And so, impressions have two elements. They have that element that these days we would say exists in your brain alone, even if it is a brain that is learning about the world. I mean, for instance, the greenness of green, the blueness of sky, the bitterness of the olive. That impression, then, that relates to what you feel. And that is surely a passive synthesis, in that within Hume, the feeling is created in the impression. If you never had the impression, you would never have the feeling. It awakens then in your brain sensations that would have just lied implicit, never pulled out. And yet, of course, thus far, Hume is probably no further than Berkeley. This is just in the middle of another. And I am locating it myself within the brain because I think that it allows one to understand, in terms of modern theory, what Hume is saying. Although, within strict Humean analysis, the brain is just another idea like the rest. It just happens to be an idea that allows you to orchestrate what he's saying. I have to say that quick now before somebody screams at me and says, "Oh, the brain doesn't exist." But of course, that's not the fire of Hume's idea. The fire of Hume's idea, I've already mentioned it, is the liveliness of an impression, is vivacity. The fact that an impression doesn't feel like simply exciting sensation for yourself. The greenness of a tree as you see it, the blueness of a sky, is more vivid than it would be in a painting, and far more vivid than it would be if you just sat there and dreamed it or imagined it, when it would pass like a gauze over the mind. And that vivacity, it is that vivacity then that matters, because it is that vivacity that burns for Hume the prime principle, which is really contiguity. Let me quickly explain. I should have perhaps already said, resemblance lies in the fact that any impression burns a place in your brain, and that place can always be returned to. So green is always lights up one particular part of the mind, one particular part of the brain. And as it lights up green, it lights up all the things near it green. There's a spill in thoughts. There's a spill in the feeling of bitter. So that bitter, when it lights up, is more than it could. When it is lighted up by one impression, it always lights up in a way that could be for any impression, or to things that are a bit like bitter. or even into the allegory of bitterness, in the way that it can make you feel nauseous, but also a little bit of it is just enough to make the world work. The entire thing, world of resemblance then, lies in the geography of the brain. Contiguity is not like that. Contiguity actually burns the trackways into the brain. The brain becomes like a city with its own particular paths, its own particular nets, with its own particular routes, burned by that fire that is lent to us from a beyond. We enter into what we are then, in the middle through another. Through the fire of vivacity, we become what we can be. The brain is a scurry full of trackways where one leads to another, And Hume is very clear about why this happens. It's because the vivacity, liveliness, has a burn. And that burn lasts for just a bit and rolls on to those impressions that you have as you think that thing. And therefore, impressions that also light up with the fire that comes from outside. And that vivacity then kindles as you see the impression and rolls also onto the next immediate impression afterwards and the next, so that you get a line of quick burning vivacities, each lending some of their power to the next vivacity, each spilling over onto all the thoughts you had at that particular time, until you have these trackways burnt into your brain, the trackways of your history, the things that you have done, the this, then this, then this, then this, of the contiguity of the brain. A passive synthesis, then, that is more than just the learning of cause and effect. The passive synthesis that creates our minds as we actually experience in them. When you map out the course of a day, when each impression, always according to the impressions that have been, according to the trackways vivacity has burnt within the mind. And Hume, of course, in this has a great deal of freedom. Vivacity, contiguity can be very random, because of course it can burn any path it wants to. All the things that are linked together will form some sort of silent constellation. But those that you return to again and again, the routines of the day, they become deeper with each burning, of course. And crisscrossing, of course, this are then causation. And causation for Hume, of course, is the synthesis, and it is the necessary passive synthesis, again, of the world of resemblance and the world of contiguity. So, as you have a cause, with a cause, you expect a certain set of contiguities to always follow. So a contiguity learns to resemble. So one thing is always before another. Now, it is born necessarily out of contiguity the minute it becomes integral within the mind. The minute a trackway becomes simply part of the mind, because then it gets caught up in the brain and in the mechanics of resemblance, so that trackways follow the same pattern. Likewise, any resemblance that automatic, but it works in both directions. It's easier perhaps to see that contiguities, as they are repeated again and again and again, all resemble one another. It's probably the easiest way to understand it. So, but you could start with a resemblance that led you to expect what always followed on from that resemblance. That would also be a cause. So you saw a green that reminded you of a green that you once saw before, and then you would be looking for the outlaws that followed on from that green. So they can be powered by contiguity or by resemblance. But the point is that they allow you to order the mind into an if, then. But that is always caught up. I've got that phrase actually from Deleuze, I've just realised, and the and, I have to attribute it. Both of them are from different repetition. And there is a sense in which I'm using that Hume allows you to understand those two syntheses incredibly well. Deleuze doesn't use him for the second one, but he does use him for doesn't use him to understand the and sequence. Quick aside, this really. But actually, I think vivacity does it just as well as Bergson ever could. The point is then, with all of that this movement, this set of movements, this and, creates for us a mind in which we live. A mind, of course, that is endlessly open, because no impression has any right to know that it itself is. There is no truth in this world beyond the impression, no truth beyond what the brain has. What the actual world is always open. And one of the interesting things about Hume is he's very happy to leave it open. He doesn't need to talk about a theory of events. He doesn't need to form the middle of the middle for another. That is, that thing that lies beyond us, that is giving these thoughts to us, for Hume is unimportant. Because what he is interested in is how we're in the middle through another, how we exist, how we are caught up in our minds through that which is we know is lent from us from outside. Back in the day, I used to call this bright side fanaticism. And this is the bright side fanaticism of being in the middle through another. That is the fanaticism that says, well, I'll just not worry about what exists beyond me. I won't worry about that. I won't worry about the dark side loyalism that needs to think of the world even if I can never understand it. I'll understand the world as it has fallen inside what I am, as it kindles something within my own mind. And I'll understand that and that alone. That middle through another, where the through is that what is lent from beyond. But a beyond I can never know, beyond the impressions that it kindles within my mind. It's a very powerful vision, bright side fanaticism. A very powerful vision because it allows you to navigate a world of reality, understand how the world is different, for you can never counterfeit liveliness, however passionate your soul. And yet, for all of that, understand that everything that you do see is never fixed or permanent. The sun might not rise tomorrow. The Battle of Hastings might not have happened as you thought it was, and that's just something you all have to live with. If you like, what Deleuze would have brought together as disjunct synthesis, or Leibniz in terms of events and incompossible worlds, Hume is just content to say, well, we can't say anything about that. Nothing at all. There is no middle for. There's only a middle through, a way we're caught up. But of course, that isn't the end of Hume's position, because there is a second element to it. Impressions are, I would think, say, they were scalar. They were ephemeral. They were always moving to the next, always moving to the next, always moving to the next. They are therefore always on a journey where each is shifting into the next one. This contrasts with passions. Passions are intense. And intense is the opposite of lively. Intense stays in what it is. Intense is vectorial. It's always going somewhere itself. And the weird thing about the passions in Hume is he's not Spinoza. Spinoza will give you an elaborate theory for the triggerings of passions, where they come from, and what they are. Of course, Hume's own logic totally precludes any possibility that he does that, so he doesn't do it. Passions just fall upon the mind. They are excited by triggers, but he doesn't need to say what those triggers are. They are just in the middle in me. And I am caught up then within passions that are automatically vectorial, in that they'll want to make me go and do something. They'll burn into my mind as an intense moment. An intense moment that runs almost as the counterfeit to vivacity. But where vivacity would always take you on to the next, a passion will hold you down and make you think this and this and this alone. It keeps you where you were, but not quite where you were. Because of passions, of course, as they're a part of the furniture of the mind, part of the thing we were born in the middle of. They were part of what it was to have had a mind, are, of course, caught by the logic of resemblance. Pride can become love or hatred, depending on the turn of the penny, because it contains both within it. Joy becomes love because it is already love. Emotions are messy. They are part of an organ of a mind, and that which produces joy in you could produce also love, ecstasy, excessive pride. They are messy, messy affairs. And the skill for Hume, or of being a human, is how you navigate these messy emotions. How you do not let them just go splat over the mind and bleed across 1,000 impressions, but rather how you separate them, how you tell apart the resemblances, how you allow yourself to feel differently by combining them differently, catching them in different sets of lively impressions, different sets of nets. In this, I don't think you could put a piece of paper between the young Hume and Spinoza, who he is clearly terribly influenced by. Not a piece of paper. For Hume, obviously, I say not a piece of paper, and I could just hear the Humean scholars howl with fury. There is a sense that Hume absolutely is smugger than Spinoza. So when he starts to outline emotions and impressions, he starts to outline how you can have a theory of pride and how that can give you a theory of the self. But the method he is using it is I think I've talked away about it before, probably even in this series. It's a four-way set of emotions. So the two resemblances in passion, pride and love, are caught up with love of the place you live and a thought of yourself, and so that they create a stable little quadruped of thought. But really what he is doing there is picking out emotions. He's picking out emotions and picking out impressions and catching them one inside the other. So he is telling apart messy emotion, making it go one way rather than the other, ways that he thinks are beneficial. In the fact, then, to exist at all, or to exist well, or to exist as a cultural 18th century gentleman, is to exist in the middle in another, in the middle in your passions. It is to work out how you mitigate your passions, how they allow you to form yourself as a regulated, moral individual. Because by themselves, they're great big, messy, elemental affairs that catch you up and push you here and there. But more than that, are clearly antagonistic to the world of the lively impression. The world of the lively impression that always goes on, that is always elsewhere, that understands itself by lending what it is to the next in line. And passions want to hold you down, force you to be this, and still this, as well as a bit of that, because the passion has shifted. And it is that dynamic that is for Hume what it means to exist within the mind. So Hume presents to us then a sustained analysis of the middle through another, where nothing is ever quite certain, where what we are is only through the world liveliness has given us. And our most precious ideas, like the self or God, are just a haze. They are the fact that that impression has been could be excited by the idea, for instance, of oneself is the idea of a million impressions. It is the idea as vivacity created it, but not vivacious in itself. It is, if you like, the ultimate effect of vivacity. But vivacity is what gives you these million impressions. But it doesn't guarantee their truth. Notions like the self, then, is an attempt to form what liveliness gives the mind and to own it for yourself, to form it in some sort of office of circumlocution, to say this whole set of stuff should be mine. But it was never yours. It always tumbled in from outside. It was always the world that vivacity gave you. Because in the middle through another guarantees no truth. No one way of being understood. It rather creates an endless algebra, an endless set of moving. And Hume is the king of understanding that, of the bright-sized fanaticism, of understanding impressions as if the impression was real in itself and therefore never truly my idea. and not something I can just dismiss by a relationship with God and talk about the middle with another. No, it is the impression and the way it kindles green that gives you your reality. And then the second stream of reality is coming in from passions, and we are always caught juggling one with the other, trying to be in the middle of what we can become.